Good morning and
Good
welcome
morning.
to episode 4. We're on
Yes.
episode 4 of The Well. Welcome. Good morning, Catherine.
Good
I think
morning,
we said
Drew.
good morning already.
We did,
Yeah,
but
we did.
we can do
I
it anyway because we need
I
more
just wanted to
coffee.
say I know. I wanted to say good morning again and good morning to everybody. Coffee,
Cheers.
coffee, click, click. Yeah. We'll get the coffee cheering going. Today we have an interesting topic. I feel this is something that Catherine and I talk about an awful lot. I don't think too much. I think the longer we've been together, the more we've talked about it. And it's been a wild ride. I have to say, you have exposed me to so much stuff I ran away from in a good way. Exposure
Okay.
is not always bad, but stuff that I had absolutely thought of as toxic and yucky and just no way, never me, not going to happen. So
Never say never.
that is very true, as I am learning. Never say never. So today's topic, we're going to get into. I don't like this term, but I feel like it encapsulates the topic the best we can get from this term is interfaith, right? How to be in a relationship when you're not of the same faith. Would you categorize it any different?
I wouldn't. I interfaith is, I think, the right term, but I feel like it's a very weak term to use for our journey.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But so we thought we would do a little Q&A. That's our little thing, right? Back
Mm-hmm.
and forth, little Q&A. And
Yes.
shout out to everybody that has been encouraging us to keep going. I am overwhelmed with the comments of people just saying how much they've enjoyed the conversation. So again, we'll put this out there every time. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe on all the platforms. We're releasing the full episodes on YouTube and Spotify and Apple. And we have all our clips out there on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. So it
We
really helps
do.
a lot for small creators like us to make sure that we are engaging with everybody that wants to be engaged with. Sort
Yes.
of weird, but we'll roll with it. Like you said, I'm still working on this first cup of coffee. So the
I can
brain
tell,
ain't braining.
dear. That's okay. I can't talk. I
This would
cannot
be a
talk.
fun one. We're gonna rip through this. This is gonna be a good one. I can feel it. We're at our peak right now.
That's all
Top
right.
top of the game. Top of our
Yeah.
game. But
Always.
always, always, always. So a little bit of backstory before we jump into this. My background is I was raised Jewish and, bar mitzvah, the whole kit and caboodle. I know this beautiful face you wouldn't have thought, but and Catherine, you were raised Southern Baptist?
Southern Baptist, baby.
Yeah. So what a combo.
But wait, Southern Baptist Christian. So have to get all the terminology in there.
Got you. And what an interesting mix. The Southern Baptist Christian with the Jew. Right? I feel like there's a movie story in here somewhere, but
That's right. There
it's
is.
it's been a learning experience to understand. I have to be honest, my first exposure to a Southern Baptist was, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old in overnight camp, and I got woken up by water being
Oh,
splashed on me.
I didn't realize that was the first one. I thought it
That
was
was the
the
first
other
one.
one trying to convert you.
No, that was the first one. He was an interesting person. Let's just say we grew up different back then, where, things could just happen when you were younger and it wasn't as big of a deal as it may
And
have been
while you were
now.
asleep, that's a little bit
Yeah,
disturbing.
I mean, it's a heck of a way to wake up to baptism, but I wasn't feeling it, so I kind of freaked out, and that was the end of that. So that was my first exposure to what I deemed as the crazy Southern Baptist people. So I lumped you all together, by the way. So
But
shame
you
on me.
didn't realize, or you didn't know that this person was Southern Baptist. You just thought it was a
Oh no,
Christian.
no,
Oh, you
no.
did? Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
He
okay.
made it known. He was very
Oh,
vocal
got
about
it.
his
Ooh,
faith
okay.
and his approach. So if you were not Southern Baptist, he was going to do his darndest to make that happen. He was going to show you the way to the Lord. So
Okay. So then
so
what
that
did you
was
think after that? That was
I
that
thought you were all
always
I thought you were all crazy because in honesty, like in my limited exposure and my ignorance, right? For not seeking knowledge, but in my youth, Footloose. I mean, that was the exposure to the masses when it came to Southern
Footloose?
Baptist. Do you remember the movie Footloose?
Yeah, no, I
You weren't
remember.
allowed to dance, you weren't allowed to drink, right? Like the
Well,
religious, right?
now that is Mhm.
So that's what I thought. I thought you didn't want to have fun. Like you couldn't do anything to have fun. Like, I mean, you couldn't even listen to music and dance. I mean, that seemed weird. Like I grew up in a very different experience. We always had music playing and creative and arts and all this stuff. And I just felt like,
Yeah.
gosh, what a miserable life. I didn't claim to be, it's an ignorant point of
No,
view and I get it.
hey, I mean, a lot of people do think that, and they're not wrong because coming from the outside or looking outside in, it does appear a certain way. And I will say that there are many types of Christians in the world. So you can't lump everybody together because I mean, that's just people, right? Like they're varying degrees of people within different groups. So you experience the very extreme, and that set the tone for your life. Unfortunately.
It definitely felt that way, so, yeah, it was bizarre.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way, it was bizarre.
Okay. So should I give some context about how I was raised?
Sorry, I was having a technical issue. Yes, give us some background on your
Okay.
upbringing, and also, I think we can dabble into my first exposure to you, and we can get into that, so
That's my first question.
okay.
Okay.
I'll
But
pause,
but
I
I'll give
won't dive into that.
context. Okay, so my background, Christian, grew up in a Baptist church in Memphis for my entire life. I was saved, quote unquote. I became a Christian when I was 10. So I wasn't really practicing my faith for many, many years. We can dig into that later, but I was raised Christian, Southern Baptist. Dancing, drinking was not part of our lifestyle until I was a teenager. And then, yeah, so that's basically how I was raised. So that's what I always knew until I got to college and I took a class on religion and philosophy. So that was a very interesting exposure to the world. I was very sheltered growing up. So my first question for you is when we first met many years ago and you found out I was a Christian, what were your first thoughts?
Run. That was my
Hey, no,
first
I'm
thought.
kidding. I knew that already.
But I think for me,
But you didn't
I'll
know
give
that
a
about me right away, did you?
no, I didn't,
Okay.
and
But you really
that
liked
just
me
goes to
first.
yes, I did, and that just goes to show the stigma, right, of putting a
Mhm.
label on something. But for me, in that same regard, I think I was raised a certain way, and you didn't really talk about religion openly, right? Like, you met me, and it wasn't, like, the first thing I said, right? Like,
No, no.
I
But
am
I
not someone.
knew you were Jewish.
Oh, thanks. Jeez. I guess you looked at me from the profile too much. But for me, it was just we were raised in a certain time where you just didn't talk about that stuff. So, especially
Yeah.
being a Jew, you just weren't open about it. And I still struggle today. This is a real stretch for me. I've been trying to lean into this more with support from wonderful people, but it's not something I'm comfortable sharing. So this is big for me to put out kind of things that I don't talk about because I don't know. I mean, I feel like my parents were absolutely like, "Hey, don't talk about these things," right? Like
Yeah.
don't let people know certain things because it opens you up for certain thing, right? Fear.
Of
But
course.
I think in this current state and time, we need people to support differently. We need to show up differently.
Yeah, agree.
Was that it to your first question? Is there more?
No,
I guess
I
I should
mean,
say I should give a little more as opposed to run. I
yes.
was worried. I was nervous. I thought I didn't understand like my experience with people that I deemed devout were extreme, right? There was
Right,
an
right.
extreme quality. I didn't quite understand it. I did not have a good relationship with God at all. Like always felt like why am I getting the shitty end of the stick all the time?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and so through kind of my own, I don't want to say atheist point of view. I never didn't believe in God, but my anger. And when we were at that show the other night, Lecrae said it interesting, right? Like a God wound. My people wounds turned into God wounds. So
Mhm. Yeah.
that perspective didn't come until much later in life. But I think through your care and feeding, you have exposed me to so much more about what Christianity and what good Christians are. So I'm trying to balance my point of view. No, you have. My point of view early on when we met was this is going to be weird. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. I was uncomfortable and nervous.
Right. So my disclaimer is I am not perfect. No one is, but I so I yes, do I claim to be a Christian? But yes, I strive every day to try to do better, but I have my faults for sure. I would say so from my perspective, I was concerned, but I wasn't that worried actually because I felt like the person that you are and for context, people that don't know you, your coaching background, like professionally, the fact that you're so open-minded, I thought, wow, like I never went into the relationship wanting to change you. That was the whole thing. I really loved who you were as a person, and I thought your relationship with God is between you and God. So if over time I influence that, great. And if not, that's okay too. So I think you were more concerned about it than I was.
Probably because I think for me, it was a really uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
I had a lot of struggle with religion, period.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say, like, the Bible does say, "Don't be unequally yoked." It's a warning because when you're not with someone that can share your faith, sometimes you feel very alone in the relationship. So that's always a concern. If you're dating somebody or you're married to somebody that doesn't share a similar faith so that you have that connection, that's always very concerning.
And I felt like you have been a slow drip with your faith with me. And as the years go by, right, like I get exposed to more and more of your history and kind of your evolution into where you are today. So I'm getting more exposure to that and I'm always surprised. There's things you do that always surprise me. So that kind of leads me into my question, right?
Okay.
What have you learned about my beliefs that have surprised you the most?
That's a good question. I've always been very familiar with Jewish traditions. I had a Jewish friend, really good friend growing up who was Jewish, Kim
Did they have
Waxman.
horns? Did they have horns?
No. No, and
Okay, good.
actually, I didn't even remember that being, like, a thing that people said, but, I definitely had some family connections to the Holocaust, so, I understood the traditions, I understood the holidays. There wasn't really a lot that surprised me, actually. I felt very familiar, and, the Bible talks a lot about Jews and, so I knew the origins of the traditions that you celebrate or that Jewish people do celebrate, so it wasn't foreign to me. And actually, I really enjoyed it. I mean, playing the dreidel as a kid with some of my friends, and some of the other traditions, I mean, there's meaning in those. So it wasn't it would like I said, it's not foreign to me.
You mean you love to, have a plate full of gefilte fish and,
Who
harrose
doesn't
it
love a
and
game? Uh-huh. The dreidel
I
game.
said gefilte fish.
Oh, sorry. I was
I
still
said you
thinking
didn't li
about
Yes, I see
candy
you
and
were really yeah, you were all into the dreidel, I didn't mean to take you away
the
from that, but
chocolate
I
coins.
was trying to think, gefilte fish
No, I
game?
didn't eat I have not eaten traditional food that you would have at the holidays
Yeah.
because 'cause I've heard such
Jewish
bad things ab no, I'm kidding.
Hey hey,
Some
to each
people
their
love
own.
it. Yeah,
Some
that's
people
so
love it.
true.
It's not for me either. I'm not a
It's
huge
true.
fan of the cat food, but some people love it. And, I was always that's why I was always a bad Jew. I don't like lox and onions and yeah, I just no, sorry. Moving on.
Way to slam your own food. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, I'm just being honest,
To
putting it
each
out
their
there.
own.
That's right. That's right.
So, next question, and I think we talked about this. Well, actually, I'll turn the question around. What have you learned about my beliefs that surprised you the most?
So I'm still learning about your beliefs, but a few things that jumped out at me is truly how you lead with heart and your passion of building and hearts and minds. So I really didn't understand a lot of how you approach things. I never thought to care to understand. And through my deepening knowledge of your faith, I started to see connections in ways that I didn't understand before. And it was really interesting for me to be exposed to kind of the nucleus of who you are in a way, to how you treated people. I always thought you were goody goody, right? Like you were always so nice. I mean, literally, you didn't have a bad word to say about anybody. Here I am, this feral animal walking into the relationship, right? Completely out of sorts. I swore up and down. I said things that probably you didn't like to hear. Just my vernacular was much different. And I never understood what the big deal was.
Yeah,
And I know
yeah,
this is like a small thing, but I was shocked coming into this house, right? Walking into a house, and we touched on this on the prior podcast that we
right.
did. Walking into a house new, I grew up, you cursed. The F bomb was like normal language, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone, like, I thought my name started with the F word. So
So
it
terrible.
just, it just, well,
Poor
I mean,
thing.
just different times. So
Yeah,
I was desensitized to certain language at a
right,
young age, and I feel like when I walked into this house, I was like, "Wow, that I can't talk like this." And it took a while for me to have self-awareness. It's like, "Okay, stop. Don't say that." Like that, you don't say that.
uh-huh,
So, especially with the kids, because it's just normal for me. So it was hard, but I had enough. I don't want to say I had enough. It was important enough to you where I was like, I need to respect this and be better. So to me, I didn't understand that at first. I just
yeah,
thought, what's the big deal? But now I have a different point of view on that. So your approach to things felt very foreign to me just due to how I was raised, and the environments I had grew up in were aggressive, right? They were
right,
extremely aggressive. They were interesting. I'll leave it at that. All parents, they do the best they can. So, including
true.
ourselves. So,
Yeah,
this isn't me slamming my upbringing or anything like that. It's just a matter of I was
it was
raised in a
different.
much different environment than you, and that
Right,
environment was probably a lot more. And I don't want to say, so my parents got divorced at an early age, and I think this impacted my spiritual journey. So I think I was 9 or 10 when my parents got divorced, and we left the synagogue, right? My mom couldn't afford it, or said she couldn't afford it, and
right,
my dad was working. So there was not a lot of opportunity to continue the Sunday school experience and learning about my religion more. So I just kind of was like, screw this. I don't need this in my life, right? Like, what's it doing for?
right,
It's a pain in the ass. I don't want to devote any time to this. So I didn't have that push that may have been needed to continue to learn about things. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That was kind of my exposure to, and so I'm kind of looping back into your question as far as that was what I thought. Walking in and learning about you, I was like, wow, this is going to be weird. This is going to be uncomfortable. This is going to be difficult, but it wasn't
right.
because of who you are and how you approach things. Gosh, you just grab people by the hand. It's like when you walk into a room full of strangers. I've never seen anybody do this, and this is probably sums you up in a short way, how you approach things. You walk into a room full of strangers and you make every single person in that room feel seen, heard, and welcomed. Literally, doesn't matter what you look like,
I try.
what you're doing, you succeed. I mean,
Thanks
so
for saying that.
I was very curious about that because that's a very uncomfortable thing for me to do. I'm not the most extroverted person. Hot take, right? Like shocker. But I'm just not. So I get nervous. Hey, we all fake it till we make it, but I get nervous walking into a room. I don't see that from you. And I do believe that that stems from your deep roots in faith.
Yeah. Well, I wanna go into the next question if you're okay with that.
Sure, dear.
Okay. Because I know I just asked a question, you answered it, but I have another question for you. Have you ever felt judged by others, family, friends, in general? And how do you feel that judgment played a role in your life? Because I feel like judgment is a topic, like a mini topic within this that we should talk about.
Yes, I felt judged. And I think I will never forget this moment. I experienced an anti Semitic moment. I didn't even know what that meant, right? I honestly didn't
Yeah.
understand any of it at a young age. It's just so we were young. It was me, my brother, and my sister. We were in my dad's car. We were at 7-Eleven. My dad was running in. I don't know, he was getting something. And back in the day, you would leave the kids in the car, right? The windows were down. And
Yeah. I
this
remember that.
yeah, like there was just that's what you did. You left the car running, no seatbelts, right? But I don't know how this transpired. I remember the incident. I don't remember what led up to it, but
Right.
as my dad was walking out, this man started screaming in the car and at my dad saying, "You stupid kike," right? You
Wow.
dumb Jews. And my dad, I've never seen my dad get so mad, except at me. But this was a different level of anger,
Yeah.
like fight or flight. And my dad like grabbed he used to keep this massive cable. It was like a wiring cable in the car
Wow.
as a, a weapon. So
Yeah.
he ran in to he grabbed it
Self-defense.
out of the car and he was like, "Don't move, don't leave the car," stuff like so that was my first exposure to, wow, there's something different about us that we're not supposed to talk about. So
Wow.
it wasn't addressed, and I think, again, no shade to my parents, but, like, we didn't talk about that. Even after the incident, it really wasn't talked about.
Right.
So,
I feel like
I f
that has happened a lot in that generation. There wasn't a lot that you did talk about. You didn't talk about religion, didn't talk about politics, didn't talk about money,
yeah, I
and
think we need to go
now
back to those times.
true, yes and no. But I
I'm
do
kidding.
like that even now we can talk about these things. I think it's good that we talk about it. It's not taboo, you know?
I
Well,
do, and
in
I
certain
I
certain ways.
I think there needs to be more dialogue because
Yeah.
honestly, if I would have never, let's just say I would have never met you, my point of view on Christianity may have stayed the same forever.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
may have never changed my point of view or seeked any additional knowledge to understand anything about anybody's faith.
Yeah.
So I think that's sad, but I think that was my first exposure to feeling, I hate to use the word shame, but shameful, right? Like I shouldn't talk about this because it's shameful. I
Right.
don't know why that word comes to mind, but that just feels like the word that just fits the bill for this.
Yeah. I would say my like being judged was very different for me. So I I actually didn't really feel judged for being a Christian by the outside world. I felt more judged from inside, actually. So, which is really interesting. And now over the years, as I reflect on my Christian journey, it's really interesting. Hindsight's 2020, right? So, I grew up Southern Baptist, as I said. I went out and evangelized. I would go down to I don't know if you actually knew this. I would go
I don't.
down
I'm
okay.
learning. Wow. Let me, I feel like I need a snack. It's settle in.
So we would have this is when I was like in my early 20s. And we would go down to Beale Street and we would witness, quote unquote, to people, and share the gospel. And I felt very passionate about it at the time. And I'm not saying evangelism is bad at all, but it kind of turned into things more extreme. And I didn't like that. My parents, we were all Christian in our family, but I always felt and I worked at a church for years too. So I got a behind the curtain look at how churches operate. And keep in mind, the church is full of broken people and no one is perfect in the church, even the pastor. So I often felt judged by other Christians because I did or did not do certain things. I didn't lift my hands up when I was singing songs, praise songs, and I always felt judged for that. And when I looked at the Bible, I was like, well, it doesn't really tell you that you got to raise your hands up, or you have to do certain things. Why? And then I started thinking, gosh, like, why do we overcomplicate everything? Why are we judging each other? It's about the rules and not the relationship. And so that really when I started thinking more and more about that, through my 20s and I experienced certain things at the church, and I am not by any means saying churches are bad, but I think as Christians we have to be so careful about passing judgment on people. and think back to the quote from the Bible is like, I'm looking at the speck in your eye, but I've got a log in mine. The judgment, I got my mom was judgmental, and I love my parents, but being raised in that kind of environment where I felt like I couldn't really talk about certain things because I was afraid of judgment, or I couldn't talk to other Christians because I was afraid of judgment, that's not good. So when you and I met, I had a completely different view of my Christianity. And I thought, I'm not going to do that to my kids, and I'm not going to do that to other people. What happens with other people is between them and God. If I can be a good influence, based on what I do and how I act and how I talk, etc., that's all that God is asking me to do. He's not asking me to force people. And that was when you and I met. I thought, I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm here to love people. So I think my whole journey became very different, and I looked at Christians and Christianity and faith in a very different way. Less about the rules that we place on ourselves with different denominations, but more about, do I have a relationship with God? And that's the most important thing. Everything else is just excess.
I'm thinking, no, there's so much in there. I have watched, so I've had the fortune, I've been fortunate enough to experience this. I didn't realize it until later. The juxtaposition of your relationship with the church, right? Coming
Yeah.
into our relationship, you had a relationship, a season that was ending, coming into a new season, feeling far from your faith, maybe, or far from the support system that you were raised in, and then finding your way back, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to find the community, the sense of community that I think you were seeking or longed for, right? I mean, especially
Right.
when you have a life event, a life-changing event happen, I mean, you have to lean on your community, or it's great to have a community around you.
Right.
And I think when you don't, you really feel alone, especially after
Oh,
being
yeah.
dedicated, right? So, can you tell a little bit more about
Oh, yeah.
some of the struggle that you've had in regards to finding a place for worship and feeling welcome?
Yes. Yes, I definitely can. Gosh, that's been such a journey. I'll try to keep it short, or as short as I can. So, I grew up in one church. I was there for years and years. I worked at it. And towards the end of working at the church, I started noticing that there was more emphasis on membership growth and tithing and programming, and people were hurting in the church, and the church was not meeting them where they were. One of like my original pastor used to say, don't be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. And I think a lot of Christians fall into the trap of being self-righteous and telling people, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. And it's frustrating because, I went through a life event. I got divorced. I was working at the church, and they said, you can't hold your position anymore here. And so I resigned. And I had people in my life group, my adult couples life group, that looked at me differently. And I thought, gosh, like, we live in a real world with real problems, and we should be loving people through their life journey. You don't just cut people off because something bad happens. So that really, it didn't jade me from God. Like, I wasn't I mean, my relationship with God has been the same, ever my entire life, but my relationship with people has changed. My relationship with the church has changed. So I look at it from more of a critical eye. I think growing up, I just accepted everything for face value. Oh, well, this is what my parents believe. This is what my church believes. This is what people tell me. And I really started to question what I believed. And I think that was the pivot point for me in my Christian journey. and thinking, we have all these denominations out there and every denomination has different rules. And for me personally, and people may disagree, and I would love to hear people's thoughts, but, and I say all this in love, and I'm not bashing the church at all. I don't want people to think that. I think community is extremely important. But I also think too that the way that a lot of churches, and you can see it in Revelations, like at the end where God actually says, hey, churches, like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And we see it now. It's frustrating to see a lot of churches that are so focused on all these other things instead of ministering to people in the real world, in the time we're in. People are hurting. People are in need. And what are we doing to minister to the soul? Not what are we doing to create more programs, more groups, more resources, that sort of thing. So I know I kind of digress, but that was my journey. And that was a huge frustration. And then when I moved from Memphis to Texas, I was like, okay, I want to find a new church. I enjoy community. I want to be part of a community of like-minded people. Can I tell you that I visited probably 12 different churches here? And
Which
I
is not a far stretch since there's one on it's like literally there's more churches than convenience stores, so
Yeah, very true. And, I hear pastors that often say, well, it's bad to church shop. It's bad to, you should just stick with a church and be loyal to the church. And I disagree. I think, and I think as a Christian you evolve, so your needs change, right? Over time as you grow up, as you mature, as the world changes. So sometimes a church that you've been in for a long time may not be feeding you anymore. And it's time to find a new group or a new pastor that's feeding you. I mean, you have to have your soul fed. So if you're not getting that, and that was my issue, is I was not finding pastors or people in the church that were feeding my soul. I wanted to learn. I was hungry. And so, I did find a church. It was kind of funny because I had gone out and looked at all these churches, and I went to a few here and a few there just to be able to feel that community. And there was one close to my house, and I thought, oh, that one's never that. I'm tired of church shopping. I don't want to do it anymore. And I found a church and I went the first day and I was like, this is it. Like, I feel it. But churches are fallible, pastors are fallible. And it says in the Bible, don't put your faith in humans because they will always disappoint you. But don't let that affect your relationship with God. So I think that was what I pulled out of it is you can't let people affect your relationship with God.
So I want to ask you a follow-up question to that. So were you in conflict with your experience? Let's use your life-changing event because, like in the New Testament, it has some pretty strong language about divorce, right? The book
Yes,
of
it
Mark says
does.
anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her and divorce. So, but there's also conflicting messaging in
Right.
the New Testament as far as, Moses permitted you to divorce. So, were you in conflict with your faith because you may have been breaking your relationship with God due to your
Yeah, I will say that, gosh, talk about being honest here.
no other way to be.
No,
We're
I
opening the
love the
kimono.
question. I feel and I
Kimono is fully open.
kimono is open. It's a little scary. I feel like a lot of people may not talk about this, so I wanna talk about it. So when I first got in, when my kids hear this, I've already talked to them about this. So it's really important that you make sure that you feel 100% sure about getting married to somebody. And you and I both have had this conversation. But for me specifically, when I got married, I knew it wasn't the right thing. And I ignored it. And I got married anyway. And did I ever think I would be divorced? No, I did not. I was devastated that and it wasn't an embarrassment that I got divorced. It was, wow, I really messed up my life and my kids' lives and my ex-husband's life. And, you know, why did I do that? And I reaped what I sowed. That's a terrible way to look at it. But, I thought, gosh, I don't want to get divorced because I'm working at the church. I'm so ingrained in my church relationships with people that, this is such a bad look. But I couldn't stay married, unfortunately. And I got divorced and I lost friends because of it. And I lost my job because of it. And, looking back now, I think that, again, my whole point is we live in a real world where bad things happen. And God is a very gracious and loving God, and He forgives. And if He can do it, then why can't we do it? And so, I reconciled with that later on in life, but in the moment, it was very devastating. They talk about how, like, what are the life events that are the most taxing, and it's
Yeah.
moving, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
we just
moving,
talked about
divorce,
this.
and what is the other thing? I think there's a
I
third
forget
one.
what the third thing was, but yeah, moving and divorce are definitely owning a storage unit. Maybe that's the third thing.
Yeah, yeah, oh, that's traumatic, but yeah, I don't think a lot of people go into relationships thinking, "Oh, it's gonna end badly," you know? I think what I was searching for when I got married was I wanted a family, and unfortunately, I just went about it the wrong way, and
So
I think
did
a
that
lot of people can relate.
did that make you angry at God when you went through your divorce? Did
Oh,
you did you did you get further from your faith
no,
through that
I
experience?
blamed
Did it bring you
myself.
closer? Okay.
It brought me closer in that I recognized my folly in it, my hand in it, and I thought, "I'm getting what I deserve." And I know that sounds awful, but I didn't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want a divorce." Like it was I was married for 10 years, and it was a very long, slow drip, of this relationship is not good. And no, I got it, I really struggled internally in my mind. It was spiritual warfare for sure because I was like, gosh, I don't want to get divorced because XYZ, whatever. And it took me a long time. I prayed a lot and I said, God, like if you think I'm making a mistake, and I tried everything to keep it going. I was like, I'm going to go to therapy. Sometimes going to therapy in the church is not a good thing because, well, there was an old school of thought where it was more the woman's fault than it was the man. So the woman she needed to change. And so that really frustrated me because I felt like my needs, no one was hearing me. And I felt like, anyway, but it made me frustrated with the church and people in the church. I was not mad at God. It's rare in my life that I've ever been mad at God, but when I was mad at God in my life, I told him, but it did not change my relationship. It actually strengthened it because I was like, gosh, I see now. I see why you set these guidelines in the Bible, why you say don't do certain things, and because you're trying to keep us from getting hurt. Why are we always wanting to run towards the danger? We see the red flag, don't go there, and we're like, oh, I'm going to go there, it's so human in us. But yes, to answer your question, long-winded, I was not mad at God. I was mad at myself.
Yeah, and wow, I kept quiet because thank you for sharing that. Like that's not an easy thing to share. I mean, that's an extremely vulnerable putting yourself out there in a way that I hope that helps somebody
I
or
do
help
too.
connect with
I really
somebody.
do. I hope my experience has helped someone realize that, I mean, I want you to feel validated.
Yeah, and if you're watching this, engage with us and share your experiences because I think as a community of people, right, the human race, without that support and just sharing experiences and being connected in a way, even if you're not of the same faith, there was a quote that we were watching something. I forget the individual's name. You will know it as soon as I say the quote. You can share the
Okay.
name. This quote, I still it chills me to the bone when I hear this because I was like, gosh, it's really just this simple. Believe in God or don't believe in God. It's a leap of faith either way,
Oh, is
right?
that Lee
So
Strobel? Was that
correct.
from Case for
Yes.
Christ? Okay, yeah,
So again, like, wow, what a profound statement.
yeah,
Because honestly, I've thought about this, and I've had a real challenging relationship with God, right? Like when my brother died, I was just like, why, right? Like, why would you
yeah,
put our family through this? And it took me a long time to heal that wound, as far as saying, well, like you always tell me, God gave us free will. So there's
right,
right.
yeah,
We're asked to live a certain life, but we're also have free will to do as we please. And the
yes,
second part of that statement, as we please. So if we're not pleasing God, we're pleasing ourselves, and that could be sinful, or
right,
majority of the time could be seen as sinful. So that quote really has just resonated with me in so many ways, because faith is just that, right? Like taking a leap of faith. Either way, you're taking that leap of faith. So I appreciate your point of view on certain things, actually on most things. So I appreciate you sharing that. And my point was, I hope other people feel compelled to kind of share some of their challenges through their spiritual journey.
right,
And so it's a tough thing to talk about. I really, like, no one walks in the room and is like opens their shirt and be like, "Yeah, I'm on the cross today. Let's talk about it." Or,
yeah,
I got the big Star of David out. Let's talk about it. So it's an uncomfortable topic that I don't think needs to be uncomfortable, but as we have learned through history, right? The Bible is the most powerful book ever written, in my opinion. It has caused the most war. It has caused the most peace.
so
It
true,
has caused the most heartburn. It has caused the most polarizing views on things. And so I'll share something real quick. Through this experience, I needed to deepen my knowledge. And this is a call to action for anybody. I wanted to understand the ethos of you, your ideology. I needed to understand it more because you got me extremely curious. So you encouraged, but I started reading the Bible to understand it. And I'm going to share something that I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate for, but I didn't even know Jesus was a rabbi. That's how ignorant I was. Right. I
yeah,
was like, oh my gosh, they call him rabbi. Like, I didn't. So I feel robbed to some degree that I didn't explore this sooner in life, because I feel like it would have grounded me different. But I feel encouraged that I've been able to understand things later in life. And I hope it's this next season for me is going to be a much different experience, not only for me, but the people around me. And so I encourage everybody to deepen their knowledge in religion, to form an opinion, but know that if we just say the Bible, right? The Bible's 66 books. It's integral design. It constantly fits the narrative of any point in time. But you can also,
yeah,
like, I pulled out scripture to use, say, well, divorce is bad, right? Like, you can also find answers with one portion of the word to attack
right,
people, which we should not be doing. But any
right.
case, I digress. So let's get back to the Q&A. Let's lighten it up for a moment. We went deep in the well. So
We
hopefully everyone is coming back up with a bucket full of good water to quench the thirst.
yeah. So I'm gonna switch I'm gonna switch to something different now. So how do you think our faith has affected parenting and making decisions?
Wow, that's a good question. So, not growing up in a religious household, for example, if Travis came home and was just being ugly, I may have handled that differently. I may have said, "What the f is your problem? Why are you being a little shit?" Right? Like, what do you right? Like that. That's
Oh,
how I
yes,
was
I
raised.
know. Yeah.
Right? That would be how I would be. And of course, I'm giving a very small view of my upbringing. I mean, I'm not saying it was all bad. So I don't want, be disrespectful to my parents.
No, of course not.
But so I think for me, watching you love your children through everything has been a complete, sorry, my phone's ringing, has been an interesting experience. I'll have to edit that out. Sorry, it just blipped on my screen. So it was a distraction.
Do not disturb.
Yeah, right. I need to do that next time. So for me, I saw how you loved your kids through it. And I was talking about this the other day. I'm going to take a little bit of a scenic route on this question, but I promise it won't be long. So enjoy the view. I was talking about this on a podcast the other day in regards to at this. I'm sure we'll get lots of spicy comments, but I feel like on the East Coast, it felt much different than being here in Texas, the Bible Belt.
Uh,
But religion just felt something you had to do. You had to go to Sunday school, you had to go to church, but there wasn't a strong emphasis on why.
right.
Why are we doing this, right? Like, and I
Oh,
get
yeah, great
it,
point.
that's a tough lesson to learn when you're still in your formative years, right? Like the why may not matter. You just need to get into the rhythm of
Right.
going so you can start to explore the why. But I mean, as kids, we don't understand that. So going back to your kids in the house, I just didn't understand why you were so patient, why you didn't like flip off the handle. Like my blood is boiling. Literally, my eyes want to shoot out of my head as grenades and blow everything up and like napalm. Like that's the level
Yeah.
of anger. And here I am looking at somebody that should have the same level of anger, but is absolutely patient, calm, and looking at the opportunity to teach your children something
Mm, yeah.
based upon what they were doing. And not everything is a teachable moment.
True.
Sometimes, like you say, the ground is too hard, right?
Yes.
It's just not going to soften up. So I feel like you balanced that point of view so much better and taught me how to balance that point of view and not flip off the handle every single chance I get. Like being pissed off 24/7 is a miserable way to live. And
Yeah.
and you've really shown me or helped me understand that that's a shitty way to live and it's
Yeah.
hard. And it's hard to be around people like me, right? And that was the other thing I noticed
Yes.
is when I'm like this, no one wants to be around me, right? Like I'm
No.
intense, I'm miserable, I'm unapproachable, I'm aggressive.
Yeah.
So it was interesting for me to experience that level of growth and for you to help me get an understanding, because one thing I really appreciated about you, and I didn't understand this till later, and it was kind of my fear of religion when I met you, is you did ever tried to change me. And I've even been uncomfortable in certain moments where you'll be talking about something and you'll refer to I'd be like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Keep telling me more. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, are you brainwashing me right now? Like,
I know.
right? Like, I'm like, there's no way this makes sense in that way. I'm like, are you doing something to brainwash me? Or are you
Yeah.
trying to? But I never felt uncomfortable in your care and I always say this quote, and shout out to Travis Reed for instilling this in me. He was my mentor and someone that I care dearly about when it comes to the things I've learned. Is he always used to say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I feel like I was ready and you were the teacher that really helped me understand things in a much different way that I wasn't capable of doing in the past. And maybe that's just age. I don't think it's only just age, but so yeah, my approach to being in the room changed greatly. So that's a bigger answer to the original question in
Mhm.
regard to how I walked into the room had to change because, or if it didn't change, I had to deal with the results of my behavior.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to do when you're reflecting, right? To look in the mirror, be like, wow. And it's surrounded by people like I've never been in a household. I don't mean to keep harping on this. The kids didn't curse. I've never been in
No.
a like honestly, I've never been in a house where nobody swore. So I was just that was a huge deal for me. A huge deal. I don't think I ever
Well,
realized
you
how
shouldn't
big of a
say
deal.
never.
But you know what I mean?
Never.
Like
Yeah,
there's a
for the most part.
it takes a lot for you to swear.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
definitely.
Driving on
I
the
have to be really
tollway,
mad.
driving on
The
the tollway,
tollway.
that's the linchpin, right? Like we
I don't
all
like
turn
myself
into
when I
yeah,
drive.
we all turn into somebody different on the
Yes.
Dallas tollway because if anyone's ever driven in Dallas, you know exactly what we're talking
Oh,
about.
yeah,
So,
preach. Yep.
yeah, but there wasn't a lot of aggressive behavior in this house at all from
Yeah.
anyone. And I was always shocked at how I will say, I'll give the kids a lot of credit. And to your testament, they would come and apologize if they did something wrong, if they said something wrong. It took a while for us to teach them the
Yeah.
importance of forgiveness. And it taught, so that was the other thing is you really encouraged forgiveness and I've never heard you ever, which is such an amazing quality, especially when you anyway, use it against them in the future. In an
No.
do you remember this time you did this? I mean, unbelievable. You keep receipts, but you never use them. You never use them. You really don't. And that's
Awful
a
when you do.
loving environment to be around. So you have upskilled me in a way that I wanted to be better. I didn't feel forced. I wanted to be better because I'm like, this is better for us. I'm not
Yeah.
saying this is, but for us in this house, that was the best possible experience I could have been exposed to. Cause literally, I really do. I know I joke about it, but I really do feel like a feral animal, like just completely
Oh, you were.
untamed. So
No, I'm kidding, kind of. No, I mean, I will say I've definitely seen when you first moved here, you were very like, you just had this very angry so, when I first met you, I thought you were, like, a Philly bulldog, but you were so soft inside, like a teddy bear, and a lot of people didn't see that about you, that you just had a real heart of gold, and well, actually, I'm sure a lot of people see it, but I always thought, wow, you're tatted up, you're very like tough looking but inside, gosh, you were just so caring about people and others and always wanting to like take the burden from other people. And so, but I also saw a side of you where you were very angry and you had a lot of anger bottled up from over the years, just life. And the more that we had these conversations, the more I could see that anger melt away. And you just became so much calmer. And it was really an awesome transformation. But I also think, too, like, I remember growing up and, my mom, and I know I keep mentioning my mom, but every time I would
shout out,
say,
shout out to the
Linda,
shout out to Linda and Martin.
yeah. But, she would always just kinda not fly off the handle, but, "Well, why do you wanna do that?" Or, "Why," this or that. She did it from love, she was always trying to protect my sister and I do recognize that, but it was always frustrating because I felt like I couldn't talk about things. So, I wanted that for the kids. I wanted them to feel like we could talk and have conversation, but without us flying off the handle. And I feel like it worked, because they tell us a lot of stuff. And, patience in teaching, being able to say, okay, well, you made a mistake. What have you learned from this? Like, do you feel like when you make bad choices, you drift further away from relationships, And it was equal to when we drift away from God and do our own thing, we don't feel as close to God. So it was always, how can we relate it back to teachable things?
I like that. I like that. See, you're teaching already. Always the teacher. Always the
No.
teacher. So as we come to a close, because we try and keep these discussions to about an hour. We try. Um, and we're going to continue to do more. I know we're a little late on this one, but hey, stuff
Life
happens.
happens.
That's right. So I have two questions that I want us to kind of go. I have two questions. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if you have any more questions, but one question I have would be, what advice would you give for other interfaith couples? And if you have any, and I want you to finish this sentence. So we'll start with the finishing the sentence and then we can go out on the advice. Faith isn't about being the same. It's about
Oh, you want me to finish it? Or
I
people?
wasn't I wasn't at, so yes, I would like everyone to finish that statement, but for our listeners that are not watching the video, I will say that I would like for you to finish that question. So faith isn't about being the same, it's about
Gosh, that's a loaded question. I would say that to me, there's a core belief, a core value in faith. And for me, it's, do I have a relationship with God? And I think we get sidetracked by all the extras and we get focused on so many other things. So I would challenge people to think about, what does faith really mean to you personally? And how does that connect you with others? So that's how I would leave that. I know I didn't really answer the question,
No,
but I feel like that's a question that only other people can answer in their own lives.
and I think that's how before you judge people for their faith or their understanding, what's your ideology? Have you looked at yourself and done a lot of reflection and gone deeper into your knowledge, understanding, and desires to understand why you're tied to faith, what you're faithful for, and why you're faithful for those things. So it's a hard question. I don't know if anyone can truly answer it. It's a hard question because it's so deeply personal, I think
Mhm.
too,
Right.
right? People's faith is not, and we've debated this and discussed it at great length. Catherine and I, it's funny. I used to love watching TV. I would watch everything on TV.
Still
I'm
do.
like, I still enjoy TV. Yes, I like to turn my brain off. But I'll tell you what, I don't watch nearly as much TV as I used to. Why am
True.
I saying this? Because we'll sit and talk for hours
Yes.
almost every night and we get into these deep conversations. And that's kind of part of the genesis of some of this podcast was like, gosh, we should see what happens if we talk about this in an open forum. But I think that has really helped me understand faith differently. And we have challenged each other through our ideology, our understanding, and our upbringing and our education to go deeper into our faith and strengthen it not only with each other, but our relationship with whomever, right? Whether it be with God, with each other, with our parents, it's become a centering ground. You have said this, I have said this, and I've come to learn this much different. There's only one person that gets to judge us at the end of the day. At the end of
Yes.
everything, it's God. So have
Yep.
you done enough on earth to be a good person, to turn the other cheek, to welcome the stranger, right? To love thy
Right.
neighbor as you would love thyself, to honor your relationship, to walk into the gates of heaven. If we sum it up in a
Hmm.
way. So
Well
that to
said.
me that's the goodness that we should be doing here. And what's ironic is you said something to me one night when I was going into a deep, religious hole of not like curiosity, because you've been my spiritual guide for years now,
Mhm.
teaching me. And this isn't about conversion or flipping or anything
No.
like that. This is just deepening my education and things. But you said something where I was like, gosh, if we all just did that, if everyone just treated everyone better and was nicer and blah, blah, blah. You looked at me and you were like, yeah, that's called heaven on earth. And I was just like, wow, never really
Yeah.
thought about it that way, but that is true. If we could actually do, and let's just say the in the New Testament, the two commandments, love God and love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. Like, gosh, would that be heaven on earth? It sure sounds like it. So,
Yeah.
in closing, you have any advice for anyone else that has a different background, upbringing, and relationship with God, coming from different faiths, or I should say religions, coming
Yeah.
from different religions that are not the same? What advice would you give to couples that are going through this journey?
Or share your experience. Like, I'd love
Yeah,
to hear what other people have experienced in their lives.
I would say be more like Catherine and be extremely
Please
curious
don't.
and love people through their journey, right? Know that there's a lot of damaged individuals that have a lot of different views on the Bible, on the Torah, on the Quran. There's all these books that all pray to I shouldn't say all pray to the same God. The majority lead to the same God. It's just the way you get through to God is often interpreted differently.
Right.
Stay curious, be open
Yes.
minded, also allow people to explore and be a good teacher in the sense of encourage people, but also point them in a direction to self learn. I have to
Yes.
say, you've exposed me to a few things, a couple shows, a couple movies, and it's not to turn me into a Christian. It was more to open up my mind, expand my point of view, and understand a different way to have a relationship with God, which I never had. So thank you. I don't know if that's advice, but that's a little bit of a sermon, maybe we
Well,
could
thanks for
call it.
being open. I think that's the key. It's being open.
So thank you for sharing so much. I
Thank
hope our
you.
listeners, yeah, got something out of this, and it got we took a lot of turns on this one, but this was a good discussion.
It
I hope
was.
to
I
have more
enjoyed it.
discussions like this. I feel like this is an important topic to the both of us, and it's
Very.
something that we feel extremely passionate about and have been our passion has been growing, and that's not to evangelize, right? We're not out there. We had an experience the other day which was very interesting. We went to a concert,
We
and
have to tell that story.
so we went to see Lecrae, who is a Christian artist, right? The first
Yeah.
Christian rapper, I think, literally to get into the hip hop and R&B space, a pioneer. I never knew who he was, never listened to his music, but we support each other in lots of things. I took Catherine to 9 Inch Nails, right? You couldn't probably get further from God, but so we through that, I may have not wanted anyway. We went and we were in line and we were getting preached at by
Yes.
these individuals, which is ironic. You're preaching to a group of people that are going to a Christian show
Yeah.
about
It was wild.
Christianity,
And
and
I
they
even
were
asked the
super
guy.
aggressive. Yeah,
I asked the
so
guy. I said,
I go ahead.
"No, you tell it. No, you tell it, dear."
No, you tell, you tell. So I've never seen Catherine kind of get this way. Like I never realized how much she knew about the Bible. Honestly, I never realized truly how versed you are in the Word, and I've experienced more and more over the past couple years. And you started to literally challenge this individual, not in a negative, mean way, but gosh, he was just spitting all this venom. Talk about a viper, a Pharisee, right? I was waiting for him to put on his
Yeah.
robe and wizard hat, and just basically shame everybody, but constantly telling people to be on their knees and repent 24. I mean, that's not living. So, and stripping certain verses out of the Bible to use it to support a narrative that I don't believe the Bible was ever supposed to support. But
Yeah.
you probably have a much stronger response than I did. I was
Oh,
just standing
it
there as protect. I was the bodyguard at that point. I just knew I was
no.
waiting for the guy to do something stupid.
Everybody was very nice in the line, and there was another woman that challenged one of them, and it was just very off-putting. Just thought I asked the guy, I said, "Do you know why we're in line?" And he knew, and the lady in front of or the couple in front of us, they were like, "Preach it to the choir," like we didn't understand, but they didn't have their goal was not to love people. It was a very different goal. And when I started to ask him questions about what he was trying to accomplish, there was no logic. And I stopped because I thought this guy doesn't want to hear anything. He wants to do what he wants to do. He's not here for a dialogue. He's here to push an agenda, and it has nothing to do with God. So at
Yeah.
that point I stopped, and then another lady with her family also was challenging the other one, and I thought, well, I better stop before I get killed. I mean, you never know these days. People are
You don't.
crazy. Yeah, it was going back to what I said in the beginning. There are varying degrees of religious people out there. So, be on guard for the false prophets because there are some out there. So you just can't believe everything everybody says all the time.
And that on that same note, I thought it was funny how triggered I got to go right back to what I used to believe. Here is a crazy
Yeah,
Christian,
right.
Bible beating and
It's
spitting
off-putting.
words at me that is like, what are you doing? Right? Like,
Right.
this isn't community building, right?
No,
This is
no.
community
It's
shaming.
judgment.
So,
Yeah.
yes. And no one likes to feel judged in that way. So, on that note, we are not judging. So maybe that's how we close is,
Yes, I think that's a great way to
be
close.
be careful how you approach this so it doesn't only feel like judgment, and be careful,
Yes,
be love people through experiences as opposed to judging them to push them out of experiences. So
right.
this has been good. I was very nervous to talk about this, but thank you
I
for
was too,
helping me
actually.
find the courage to open up about a topic that I'll be honest, I've never talked about in my whole life until I met you.
No, I love that you were willing to do it.
No, and I hope we continue to talk about this. I think
Oh,
we
we
all need to
will.
talk about this because I would love to live by your version of Christianity and religion as opposed to a lot of people's. And You are extremely devout. This is nothing to do with picking and choosing. I've never
Devout.
seen any You are. I've never
Oh,
seen
well,
anybody or
thanks.
met anybody that has been as religious as you are without being outwardly in the way that I'm used to. So, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And that wraps up episode 4 of The Well.
Can't believe it.
I know. I can't wait for episode 5. We might have to
Me
record
too.
another one this week. So,
Mm.
again, thank you for listening. It's been, I think, a very interesting topic. Hopefully, others think the same. And shout out to our listeners. I want to give a shout out to one in particular. Thank you, Michael, Professor, for always supporting our content. And thank
Yes.
you to everyone else that's been supporting it. But
And the
Professor
comments.
Sneaker, yes, Professor Sneaker in particular has been giving us lots of feedback. So he's been super engaged with our content. So shout out to him. I wanted to give him a little shout out. But so yes, appreciate everyone tuning in, tapping in, liking, following, subscribing. It does help. So we will see you on the next one. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Drew.
All right. Bye.
Bye.